Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another awesome weekly market forecast with me, T.Mayne, and we're going to get into things. Now for today's analysis guys, we're going to be looking at the DXY, Aussie CAD, Aussie JPY, Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar yen. Now let's kick things off guys, get straight into it on the DXY. So we'll be looking at the DXY. Basically, we'll try and stick to the 4 hour for most of the analysis. But as you can see, guys, we do have some higher time frame structure that has been highlighted here. Maybe we'll go up onto the daily on a few of these charts just to look at the higher time frame structure and just to see what's been going on higher time frame. But what we can see, guys, here on the daily is a market that has created some higher time frame support over here, came up, gave us some higher time frame resistance, came back down, respected this higher time frame support structure, giving us a higher low, and then sending prices to the upside. Now, if we come into our most recent price action, we take into account our extreme highs and our extreme lows, and we look at how price is making its ascent. What we can see, if we drop down onto the H4, we will be able to isolate an ascending structure. Where is this ascending structure going to? Towards our higher time frame resistance area. So now that we've identified how price action is moving towards our important higher time frame key areas, then we can begin to establish a bias and then look for our optimal trade entries. So we do have a multi-touch structure, first touch there, second touch over there. We could expect prices to terminate, giving us that third touch in this area of value. So what we'll be looking for on the DXY is for prices to pull into our area of value for our high probability sell setups. So as things stand right now, we have resistance up here. Price is and has created some equal highs in that area, so we expect price to want to come and take out these equal highs, give us that reversal structure, and then drop after we've come into our zone of interest. So this is, I guess, our analysis and our forecast for the DXY, guys. We've done our analysis, we've built a story, we understand where the market is and what the market is doing. We've identified how we'll be able to capitalize, or what will be the reasons for us to get involved in any dollar weakness throughout next week. And once we see the dollar index pulling up into this higher time frame resistance area and completing our normal ascending structure, guys, we'll have the probabilities on our side for some dollar weakness. Now we'll go on to the next pair, guys. We're going to be looking at Aussie CAD. We'll start on the daily, and what we can see, guys, from a daily perspective here is a market that has established some higher time frame support, pushed away from this higher time frame support, and now prices have returned back to this area where we've seen a previous bullish reaction from. What we also can see, if we drop down, or if we only focus on the most recent price action, is prices decelerating towards our higher time frame support structure that we've identified and spoken about. So our corrective structure basically starts from these important structural highs here. So these function, or that high functions as a target for us when we begin to look for our bullish biased setups. Now, if we look at things from a daily, what we can see is that we are at some resistance, and we have seen the market already reacting at that resistance area, or as we've been approaching that resistance area. So now that we drop down onto the H4, we'll get a little bit more context as to what structures can we isolate, because remember, our resistance and our support, our supply and our demand obviously give us information on where the market could react from. So at resistance, we expect the market to react bearish. At support, we expect the market to react bullish. Now that we have that, guys, our structures that we are able to isolate in between our important support and resistance give us an idea as to where we'll find our probabilities, and also where the next momentum is going to come in based off the structures that we can isolate within our range. So as much as markets are moving to the side, we can still isolate structure within this range to identify next potential momentum. So now that we have that, guys, we have a beautiful 3-touch structure here on the H4, we can see that prices can come and give us that move to the upside, completing the structure and moving. Then obviously we see that momentum to the downside. But in addition, we also see prices creating those equal highs before we tap into that nice resistance area. Now we know that markets might want to be attracted to this area to clear out any stop losses before we see that sell side momentum. Now guys, because we are at higher time frame support as well, guys, we're going to manage this position and we're going to manage this bias accordingly. When we get to our important resistance area here, that's where we'll have our sell probabilities on our side. But the closer we move to the downside, the more our buying probabilities step in, because we are at higher time frame support structures. So we will also be paying attention to, guys, if we don't see prices coming to the upside and we see this move to the downside, what we will also look for is how do prices then treat these support structures? Do we see prices giving us those reversal structures from our important higher time frame support? Guys, bearish bias from our higher time frame or from our daily time frame support, and then once we pull down into these weekly support structures, we are looking for that bullish momentum. So this is how we are going to treat Aussie CAD, guys. Just like a range, selling probabilities from the high, buying probabilities from the low, because we've already identified higher time frame, we are within a larger corrective structure. Now that we've spoken about Aussie CAD, let's get on to AUDJPY, guys. We'll start off on the daily just to highlight any important support and resistance areas that might exist there. From the daily, what we can see is during this move to the upside, we have a small retracement in this area here, obviously showing us some structure on the smaller time frames. Now that we've identified that, we come and look at the most recent price action. We can see that most recent price action has been bearish because we have lower structures, lower highs, we then form lower lows, lower highs, and we are now at potential equal lows. Now that we have all of this information, guys, we've seen what our higher time frames are doing. Let's drop down onto the H4 to understand the nature of our price action. What we can see are lower structures, important lower structural areas, swing lows being violated to the downside, market closing below and then breaking and closing back above. So guys, this shows us corrective descending nature. Now that we've established that our higher time frames are approaching our support over there that we've analyzed, we also have the confluence of prices descending correctively. Guys, we are open to looking for those buy setups. Now, what is going to allow us to actually capitalize on a buy? What you guys can see is on the H4, we have established some nice resistance just to manage our trade, understand that we are in a potential downtrend. We could see prices terminating lower, but we want to get an idea as to how aggressive is this downtrend. Now that we have that resistance, guys, we can use that as management. If prices do violate this resistance trend line, then we will start to expect our bullish biased setups to begin to form. So either after we see this violation of this resistance trend line, or if prices pull down lower and give us a termination at our important support area, as well as our support trend line that we've drawn in there accommodating our lower structures, that's when we'll have beautiful probabilities and risk to reward, guys, for this bullish momentum on AUDJPY. So this is the bias that we're going to be holding on AUDJPY, guys. We're going to be waiting to see prices either pull down lower into our support structures for those probabilities and risk to reward ratio, or we'll start to look for those buying opportunities after we see this trend line being violated to the upside. Once we see this trend line being violated to the upside, then we begin to look for our continuation structures that confirm this bullish bias. But nonetheless, you guys have seen how beautiful this setup looks. If the setup presents itself, this will be an amazing risk to reward ratio, and I guess we have the confluences of this beautiful descending structure. Now that we've spoken about AUDJPY, guys, we're going to get onto AUDUSD. Let's hop onto the daily and observe the structure that we need to highlight. So from a daily perspective, guys, and this is also weekly and monthly swing highs, we have this important resistance area over here. We can also see that market respected that area, then broke above and treated that area as support. So a nice, important, sensitive area that we need to be watching out for reactions. Now that we've established that, we can look at our most recent price action and observe the nature of the price action. So what we can see, guys, from a daily perspective is obviously lower structures being violated to the downside and prices breaking back above. Lower structures again being violated and prices breaking back above. So we see prices descending in a corrective manner towards where our important higher time frame support. So now that we've discussed what our daily looks like, let's drop down onto the H4 and begin to isolate our structures. So initially we had these lows taken into account of, and as well as these lows, and drew that structure in there, but I really wanted to focus on the most recent price action. So what I've done is just accommodated for this price action here. We can see lows being established, lower highs, lower lows, and then I guess right now we're at potential equal lows, and prices could come down, give us that lower low before we see that beautiful move to the upside. Now that we have this nice, beautiful descending structure, we can talk about correlation. If we remember what our DXY analysis is that DXY, we're in some sort of an ascending structure that is now giving us some equal highs, and we're somewhere there. We're expecting prices to take out those equal highs, give us that third touch of our resistance, and then move down. What does that mean for the DXY? Very short-term strength, and then I guess slightly longer-term weakness. What do we see on AUDUSD? The potential to come and give us that third touch, showing that short-term dollar strength, and then what? That dollar weakness and this move to the upside. Guys, do you see how beautifully our pairs are correlating in terms of structure? And once these pairs do set up, they will give us such beautiful risk to reward ratios and such beautiful probabilities, because we also have the confluence of our correlations. We're expecting some nice momentum in the direction of dollar weakness, and on AUDUSD we are getting that beautiful descending structure that is giving us that nice potential buy setup. So all we'll be waiting for is for prices to come down, give us that third touch, maybe give us a reversal structure. If we don't see a clear reversal structure, we wait for prices to break back above our resistance and then retest for that reduced risk entry, and then we find that upside continuation. So our optimal buy area would be down there, and then we'd find our reduced risk entries once price break above structure and retest. Guys, this is an absolutely amazing setup. I will be excited to see this setup develop. Let's hope that we do see this follow through of some dollar weakness. Now that we've spoken about AUDUSD, guys, let's get on to the last pair that we're going to have a look at, and that is New Zealand dollar JPY. Now on New Zealand dollar JPY, we'll hop up to the daily just so that we can observe and highlight our important key structural areas. And what we will see, guys, is highlighted on your chart this important support structure here, where we saw this whole big nice corrective structure being able to violate some structural highs. So a nice important area where we've seen buyers come into the market able to even violate some structural highs. If we look at the most recent price action, what we will also see is some structure in between. So we have lower structures there, lower highs, we have higher lows, we have lower highs, we then see prices giving us a nice lower low. So looking at extreme structure, if we only take into account our extreme price action, we have lows, highs, and lower lows. What are we expecting? We're expecting lower highs, considering price action on the daily is in a bearish bias structure. So taking that information from our daily and dropping down onto the H4, we'll then begin to isolate structures that will support this daily directional bias. On the H4, what we can see is some nice uptrends being violated nice and impulsively to the downside. So confirming to us that there are swing lows that have been violated nice and impulsively, giving us some indication of some sell biased momentum. Now, us looking to trade that sell biased momentum, All we'll be waiting for, guys, for that optimal trade setup is for our highs to be taken out. So we are expecting prices to give us an entry. Once we violate these structural highs, we then begin to look for our reversal structures to trade that continuation of that sell side momentum. So we are hoping that structure begins to isolate and begin to allow us to begin to draw and isolate these nice ascending structures. And guys, once we have the confirmation of a nice, beautiful ascending structure violating these structural highs, giving us that reversal structure, then we'll prepare to look for that trade in the direction of all of this sell biased momentum. So on New Zealand dollar JPY, let's look at what we're doing in terms of correlation. We're looking to trade some sell biased momentum. That means that if JPY gains in strength, that's where we are looking to capitalize on that JPY strength. If we go back and reflect on our analysis and look at what we're looking at on AUDJPY, we are looking for a trade in the opposite direction. So what we're doing over the course of next week is we're expecting JPY strength or JPY weakness. So if AUD is the main mover and we see AUD weakness over the course of next week, then obviously we'll see these pairs moving to the downside. Will we be interested in selling AUDJPY? Not really. But if we see that JPY weakness coming in and a buy setup forming, obviously this is the pair where we're looking for that buy. Any JPY strength that will send these markets to the downside, we're going to look for that beautiful setup to form on New Zealand dollar yen. So we're giving ourselves an opportunity to trade these pairs in different directions. We're also, on the other hand, hedging some AUD strength. So if AUD decides to be weak and decides to sell off, guys, then we will be looking for those sell bias setups on our Aussie CAD. How we are hedging this is by looking at or by looking for buy bias opportunities on AUDJPY. We are saying to ourselves, if AUD gains in strength over the course of next week, I will look for that buy setup on AUDJPY. If AUD loses strength and we see these AUD pairs making that move to the downside, the optimal pair that I will be looking for that setup is Aussie CAD. We are also looking for a buy setup on AUDUSD, so we are not going to be looking to buy both AJ and AU at the same time because we'll obviously have a lot of risk spread over these positively correlated pairs. So guys, what we're going to do is we're going to isolate further our high probability setups. Does either AUDUSD give us a better looking setup, give us a better risk to reward ratio? Remember guys, we want to capitalize on our wins as much as possible. Or does AUDJPY give us that better looking setup or that better risk to reward ratio? These are the things that we need to think about. When we speak about currency correlation, we are talking about that to emphasize risk. If you're like me and you have all of your pairs and you have a set amount of pairs or even isolate pairs maybe over the week that you're going to trade over the week, we should be looking at all of these pairs as one portfolio. We are not looking to make money off one pair, but we're looking to end the week with this particular portfolio giving us money. So I expect that within my portfolio, I am going to manage risk accordingly. The pairs that I'm trading, I'm going to manage risk. And my aim is that from these pairs that I'm looking at during the week, I must end the week at least with 1%, at least with 2%, at least with 3% profit. If it's a losing week, then it is what it is. I can't fight the statistics. The statistics will deliver themselves however they want to. But I have goals, I have aims, and my aims are not on a specific pair, but within my portfolio. I need to end the week with this portfolio having made me money. Now, guys, that we've reached the end of this YouTube video, hopefully you guys have